The problem of evil is trivial compared to that, to this. I mean, the problem of evil could be solved by just saying God is an evil God. I mean, that's not a difficult problem.
I mean, did a man have intercourse with Mary and produce Jesus? That's a factual question. It's not a value question.
Why don't we ever see a crocoduck? They sort of imagine that...
Well, that's a good question.
I think that's a great... Safe to believe in God, not just miracles.
Yeah, I mean...
Popping his head through the clouds.
Yeah, that's the thing I've worried about a lot. Obviously...
It would do wonders for the book.
The reason I worry about it is that obviously, as a scientist, I'm committed to the view that I would change my mind if evidence came along.
Welcome to the channel. Today we introduce Richard Dawkins, a bold voice for science, evolution, and critical thinking about religion and belief. If you enjoy deep ideas and honest debate, subscribe, like, and comment, so I can bring you more powerful content like this.
And Richard, you must have been asked many stupid questions over the years. Is there a standout stupid question for you?
Yes, well, the one that Ricky just mentioned, but there's also, why don't we ever see a crocoduck? They sort of imagine that...
Well, that's a good question.
I think that's a great question.
I would love that.
Question.
I would love a crocodile.
I've actually got a crocoduck tie that somebody gave me.
What image have you got in mind for a crocoduck?
A crocodile would be a crocodile that would be angry, but he's fucked because he's just got a bill.
Right, yes, that's right. That's like my tie.
Yes.
And cultures towards life abundant, and there are other patterns, the pattern of Cain, for example, that lead to absolute bloody devastation. And I don't know exactly how to construe that sort of truth, but we talked about the oppression of women, for example. It's like, how do you make a case on purely factual grounds that women should be treated as equals?
It's a moral question, and
I know that's exactly.
And I was dealing with a factual question, which is, did Jesus have a father? And you won't answer it.
Well, Jesus
a different
had
kind
an
of
earthly
question.
father and a heavenly father, like almost all mythological heroes.
So he wasn't born of a virgin then? So you're saying that Jesus was not born of a virgin?
I said, first of all, that I don't know how to mediate the fact-value dichotomy in that case. I said the same thing about the resurrection.
It's not a value, it's a simple fact. I mean, did a man have intercourse with Mary and produce Jesus? That's a factual question. It's not a value question.
You may not have said that, but you would accept that the new atheists, people like Sam Harris, the late Christopher Hitchens, have blamed a lot of history's wars on God and religion, and you make a similar suggestion in The God Delusion.
Yeah, I would blame a lot of history's wars, but the most terrible wars in history, the two major wars of the 20th century, are nothing to do with religion.
But the argument in favour of him being simple is that we want simple explanations. That's Richard Swinburne's point.
Yeah.
We want a simple explanation, and I'm saying God cannot possibly be a simple explanation. He's a very complex explanation.
Anything that we do not have evidence for that's not scientifically testable, you would dismiss?
Well, scientifically testable is putting the bar rather highly, but I do think that evidence is the only good reason to believe anything, yes.
So love, beauty, aesthetics, metaphysics?
No, I mean, those are obviously important questions, and if you ask some question like, how do you know that your wife loves you? It's from evidence. I mean, it's not scientifically testable evidence, but it's evidence. It's little looks in the eye, it's little catches in the voice. I mean, that is evidence. That's not just internal revelation.
Okay.
And Richard, obviously your books have had enormous influence on people's lives. How does that feel?
Well, I do very much appreciate getting letters from people who say, you've changed my life, and I get a fair number of those. I get an enormous number who say that my books on evolution decided them to go into science at school, and only this week I was seeing a doctor, and Australian doctor in the hospital, and he said, at the end, I want to thank you. The selfish gene was what made me take up biology and hence made me become a doctor. I love that. I mean, that's really a wonderful, wonderful
that God is a simple entity. Would you be open to the idea then of postulating the existence of this God?
Well, if he could convince me of that, but quite obviously the exact opposite of simple, so the question doesn't arise.
Well, I'm just trying to see where, ultimately where the tension is and where the rejection is there, because typically people reject Richard's God on the basis of something like the problem of evil, something like that.
The problem of evil is trivial compared to that, to this. I mean, the problem of evil could be solved by just saying God is an evil God. I mean, that's not a difficult problem. Natural selection is a deeply evil process. Nature really is red and claw, in tooth and claw.
You more or less asked me what would impress me, and I'm a naive literalist, and so I would say, if any prophet had said something like, the world is just one object in rotating around the sun, something like that. They never do. I mean, it's always some kind of moral lesson which leaves me cold.
Who would like to answer the first question? Yes, you?
If the Almighty God appears suddenly on the cloud or on the earth or part of the universe, what is your reaction? Are you going to believe or are you going to go against him?
What would it take for you to believe in God, not just miracles?
Yeah, I mean,
popping his head through the clouds.
Yeah, that's the thing I've worried about a lot. Obviously,
it would do wonders for the book.
The reason I worry about it is that obviously, as a scientist, I'm committed to the view that I would change my mind if evidence came along. And so it's a very important question. What would that evidence look like? And I've talked about it with my colleagues a great deal. I used to think, yes, if there was a great deep Paul Robeson voice coming out of the cloud saying, I exist, and then yes, obviously I would believe it. But have you ever seen a really, really good conjuring trick? There are things that I've seen done that it seems to me to be, God, that's got to be a miracle. And yet you know it's not. And so there is a real problem there that we are easily fooled.
The God delusion, enormous numbers of letters from people who say, you saved me from my religious upbringing. You articulated something that I felt myself but could never quite find the words to say myself. I am no longer I'm freed from the shackles of religion. And that I find, again, hugely gratifying. There are many who say, there are many who write in great distress because they have lost their faith and are unable to break the news to their parents or their spouse. And particularly poignant are the clergy people. We've got a project in America called the Clergy Project, which is designed to help clergy people, clergymen and clergywomen who've become atheists and can't escape because it's the only living they know. And so that's poignant when they're stuck. They can only earn their living by going on preaching sermons and things like that. So the Clergy Project does that. And I like to think that maybe I help them as well, people who need to escape and find it very difficult to do so.
It can give us a way of facing, extremely difficult life situations, etc., etc.
It gives comfort and consolation.
Somehow it sounds a little bit like, it's, to me, I feel like it's a little bit more than that. When you say it like that, I assume what you have in mind is that it comforts us the way wishful thinking sometimes comforts us. That's exactly what you mean.
Yes.
So what do you make of the fact that there are people who are extremely educated, who have read your books, who know their way around in the natural sciences and yet hold on to theistic beliefs?
Well, many of them, if you actually ask them what they believe, it turns out that they are what they might call spiritual.
What's the difference?
Well, I'm spiritual. When I look up at the stars, when I look up at the Milky Way, I have a feeling, an overwhelming emotional reaction to that. And you could call that spiritual. So when you say that highly educated people in science are religious, you want to ask them, do they actually believe, for example, that Jesus is the Son of God? Do they actually believe they're going to survive their own death? I would ask them that sort of question. Do you think that the people you're talking about believe they're going to survive death?
Yes, I think I cannot speak so much for the Christian point of view, but I know of quite a few people who are scientists and who are observant Jews and who believe that the halakha, the Jewish law, is literally true.
Yes, but do they believe they're going to survive death?
Oh, it's a question.
That's a big question.
It's a question that doesn't have the same prominent place in Judaism as it has in Christianity.
That's why I asked it. I asked it precisely because that is a scientific question. The brain is what does the thinking. When the brain decays, do you think you're going to survive death? Do you think you're going to survive death?
I don't know. I wish I had such a firm answer to it.
Let's take another question from gentleman here. Very interesting guy.
I was extremely amused when you described faith as sort of brooking no argument. This university, of course, began with the study of theology. Most of the people here would have been studying theology at the beginning of the university, and indeed the way in which it was taught was not professorial. You didn't have lectures mostly you had discussions, debates. People didn't write monographs, they collected discussions, notes of discussions. People disagreed about their faith absolutely. I mean, everybody had a different opinion and everybody expressed it and everybody was heard.
What's the question?
The idea that, so the question is, do you really think that your view of faith brooking no argument measures up to really any experience of how people think about their faith? You talked about the evidence that your wife loves you. I think for most religious people, the evidence that there's a God is rather like that.
Well, obviously, I would be mad to suggest that that theologians don't argue. They argue all the time and always have. They fight wars over their arguments. So clearly, they argue. I'd say when I say brook no argument, I don't mean that they don't argue. When you say that theologians have disputes and interesting discussions, I take it that from your garb, you take a position one way or the other on whether the transubstantiation, whether the bread and wine really is the body and blood of a first century Jew, or is merely symbolic. But what evidence you bring to bear on such an argument, I cannot imagine. It would not be a real argument at all. It would be a false argument. It would not be an argument which could be settled by real evidence.
That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Your support helps this channel grow and brings you more videos like this. See you in the next one.